But Solomon took 13 years to build his own house, so he finished all his house. He also built the house of the forest of Lebanon. Its length was 100 cubits, its width 50 cubits, its height 30 cubits, with 4 rows of cedar pillars and cedar beams on the pillars, and it was paneled with cedar above the beams that were on 45 pillars, 15 in a row. There were windows with beveled frames in 3 rows, and window was opposite the window in 3 tiers, and all the doorways and doorposts had rectangular frames, and the window was opposite window in 3 tiers. He also made a hall of pillars. Its length was 50 cubits, and its width 30 cubits. In front of them was a portico with pillars, and a canopy was in front of them. Then he made a hall for the throne, the hall of judgment, where he might judge, and it was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. And the house where he dwelt had another court inside the hall of like workmanship. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken as his wife. All of these were costly stones cut to size, trimmed with saws inside and out, from the foundation to the eaves, and also on the outside of the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, large stones, some 10 cubits, some 8 cubits, and above were costly stones hewn in sides and cedar wood. The great court was enclosed with 3 rows of hewn stones and a row of cedar beams. So were the inner court of the house of the Lord and the vestibule of the temple. King Solomon sent and brought Hiram from Tyre. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a bronze worker. He was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill in working with all kinds of bronze work. So he came to King Solomon and did all his work. And he cast 2 pillars of bronze, each one 18 cubits high, and a line of 12 cubits measured the circumference of each. Then he made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set on the tops of the pillars. The height of one capital was 5 cubits. The height of the other capital was 5 cubits. He made a lattice network with wreaths of chain work for the capitals, which were on top of the pillars, 7 chains for one capital and 7 for the other capital. So he made the pillars, and 2 rows of pomegranates above the network all around to cover the capitals which were on top. And thus he did for the other capital. The capitals which were on top of the pillars in the hall were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits. The capitals on the 2 pillars also had pomegranates above by the convex surface which was next to the network, and there were 200 such pomegranates in rows on each of the capitals all around. And he set up the pillars by the vestibule of the temple. He set up the pillar on the right and called its name Jachin, and he set up the pillar on the left and called its name Boaz. And the tops of the pillars were the shapes of lilies. So the work of the pillars was finished. And he made the sea of cast bronze, 10 cubits from one brim to the other. It was completely round. Its height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits measured its circumference. Below its brim were ornamental buds encircling all around, 10 to a cubit, all the way around the sea. The ornamental buds were cast in 2 rows. When it was cast, it stood on 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking toward the west, 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east. The sea was set upon them, and all their back parts pointed inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was shaped like the brim of a cup, like the lily blossom. It contained 2,000 baths. He also made 10 carts of bronze. 4 cubits was the height of each cart, 4 cubits its width, and 3 cubits its height. And this was the design of the carts. They had panels, and the panels were between frames. On the panels that were between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the frames was a pedestal on top. Below the lions and oxen were wreaths of plated work. Each cart had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze, and its 4 feet had supports. Under the laver were supports of cast bronze beside each wreath. Its opening inside the crown at the top was 1 cubit in diameter, and its opening was round, shaped like a pedestal, 1.5 cubits in outside diameter. And also on the opening were engravings, but the panels were square, not round. Under the panels were 4 wheels, and the axles of the wheels were joined to the cart. On the top of the cart, at the height of 1/2 cubit, it was perfectly round, and on the top of the cart, its flanges and its panels were of the same casting. On the plates of its flanges and and on its panels he engraved cherubs, lions, and palm trees, wherever there was a clear space on each with wreaths all around. Thus he made the 10 cards. All of them were of the same mold, one measure and one shape. Then he made 10 lavers of bronze. Each laver contained 40 baths. Each laver was 4 cubits. On each of the 10 cards was a laver, and he put 5 cards on the right side of the house and 5 on the left side of the house. He set the sea on the right side of the house toward the south side. Hiram made the lavers and the shovels and the bowls. So Hiram finished doing all the work that he was to do for King Solomon for the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the 2 pillars, the 2 networks covering the 2 bowl-shaped capitals, which were on top of the pillars, 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the bowl-shaped capitals that were on the top of the pillars, then 10 cards and 10 lavers on the cards, 1 sea and 12 oxen under the sea, the pots, the shovels, and the bowls. All these articles which Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the Lord were burnished bronze. In the plain of the Jordan, the king had them cast in clay molds between Succoth and Zaratan. And Solomon did not weigh all the articles because there were so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. Thus, Solomon had all the furnishings made for the house of the Lord: the altar of gold and the table of gold, on which was the showbread, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the right side, 5 on the left side, in front of the inner sanctuary, with the flowers and the lamps and the wick trimmers of gold, the basins, the trimmers, the bowls, the ladles, the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner room, the most holy place, and for the doors of the main hall of the temple. So all the work of King Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished. And Solomon brought in the things which his father David had dedicated, the silver and the gold and the furnishings. He put them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord.